I invite you to rise as you are able as we turn to Baruch, our call to worship.
Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 ya la ya la la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 ya la ya ya la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach. Hamevorach leolam vaed. Hamevorach, hamevorach leolam vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvarei choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol hama'ir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit ma'arabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam b'chochma asita malah ha'aretz kinyanecha titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha Va'al ma'orei or sha'asita yifarucha sela. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir. V'niskeh chulanu mehera leoro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated. Ve'ahavta on page 116.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'beitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ug'shartam leot al yedecha ve'ayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Eloechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Eloechem Adonai Eloechem emet.
We turn to our freedom song, Mi Chamocha, the song that our ancestors sang after they crossed the Sea of Reeds and began their journey to the Promised Land. Mi Chamocha on page 122.
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nor teilot osefele, nor teilot osefele. Shira chadasha, shibchu שמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחנו ממך, יהודה וישראל. גו עלינו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
I invite you to rise as you are able as we turn to the Amidah on page 124.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid teilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon. גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטל מחכה חיים בחסד מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך מלך ממיץ ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la ya la 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 ya. Yai lai lai, nikadei לקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאיך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוכו הארץ, כבודו, אדיר אדירנו, אדוני אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה, 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 הללויה.
We read together on the top of page 138. Modim anachnu lach, shatahu Adonai Eloheinu, velohei avotenu vimotenu leolam va'ed, tzor chayenu magen yishenu atahu lador vador, nodeh lecha unsaper tilatecha, al chayenu hamsorim beyadecha, va'al nishmoteinu hapkudot lach, va'al nisicha shebachol yom imanu, va'al niflotecha v'tovotecha, shebachol et erev v'avoker v'tzoharaim, hatov kilo chalu rachamecha, v'hamrachem kilo tamu chasadecha, me'olam kivinu lach. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha olcha, na'eh lahodot. We continue with our prayer for peace on page 140.
Sim, sim, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barcheinu yotzreinu kulanu kechad beor panecha. Sim, sim, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Ki ve'or panecha natat lanu Adonai Eloheinu, Torat chayim ve'avat chesed, utzedakah u'veracha v'rachamim v'chayim sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom tova uvracha, v'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit v'chol shah b'shlomecha. Sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom tova uvracha.
We take a few moments now for silent prayer and reflection.
Oh, say shalom, bimromav. Oh, say shalom, bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Hu yaseh shalom. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down. Oh, say shalom. Bimromav. Oh, say shalom. Bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Hu yaseh shalom. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down on all of us.
We turn now to our Torah service. We'll take Torah out of the Ark. We'll have the opportunity to read from Torah this Shabbat morning. One of the ways that we know that we are in the summer months is that we have turned to the book of Numbers, and so we get to read from an oft overlooked book with lots of really good stuff in it, in fact. And so I invite you to rise as you are able. Our Torah service is on page 244.
Big one. Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kema'asecha מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אב הרחמים היטיבה ברצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים. כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו. אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו. גדול אדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. לך אדוני הגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח וההוד. כי כה בשמיים ובארץ, כי כה בשמיים ובארץ. לך אדוני הממלכה, וימית נעשה לכל ראש. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. Feeling very grateful for Daniel this morning. Anybody else?
This morning we are reading from Parshat Bechalotcha in the book of Numbers. We are going to begin in Numbers chapter 8, verse 1. It's on page 952 of your Torah commentary if you'd like to follow along. Our first Torah reader will be Carl, who's also going to share some words of Torah with us this morning. So I want to invite Carl forward while we find the exact spot that we are.
Carl's going to get going, and I'm going to figure that out as we go.
It's this. Okay.
I just don't know where we left off. But you get going, and I'll make my way around the Torah until I find something I recognize.
Okay,
Okay.
that's good. Let me just take,
Yeah.
okay.
I actually know what it looks like.
In the Torah, a woman's commentary, at the beginning of Numbers, Rachel Haverlock, a professor of Jewish studies at the University of Illinois, writes this: the English title, Numbers, and the Hebrew title, Wilderness, reflects a tension between order and chaos, culture and nature, obedience and rebellion that characterizes the book and drives its plot. The opening parsha is all about order, the census, the position of the tribes around the tabernacle, and the investiture of the priests. In a way, this ordering is like a Potemkin village representing a superficial sense of order. The accused wife of the soda ritual in Nassau is a metaphor for wayward Israel, and an ironic one at that, since it is the truth-seeking males in Sota that in succeeding parashot tout lies, foment rebellion, and commit adultery. See the upcoming Shlach Lecha, Korach, and Pinchas. Today we have Ba'alotecha, still attempting to put order in the first in the lighting of the lamps, and then the beginning of the journey with the ark. And we have the first challenges to God and Moses, the complaints. And God responds with a fire just outside the camp. The tension that Haverlock observes shifts from order to chaos from this point on through the rest of Numbers. There is a rosy, made-up version of life as a slave, and the riffraff demand quail. God gives them what they want, but with a vengeance. And I would say, don't wish too hard for what you want. You may get it. Moses tells them God will give them a whole month of quail until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, and they die from plague. And then we have Miriam challenging Moses' leadership, and God descending from a cloud to intercede. And God said, "Hear these my words. When prophets of Adonai rise among you, I make myself known to them in a vision. Not so with my servant Moses. He is trusted throughout my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles, and he beholds the likeness of Adonai. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses?" And Miriam was struck with a snow white scale, and then she was sent out of the camp for 7 days. The tension that Haverlock writes about shifts further towards chaos. It's now weighted mostly with a series of episodes displaying the Israelites' lack of confidence in the providence of God, and there is clearly a melancholy tone for the balance of Numbers, as Rabbi said.
Stay here because you're going to continue
What?
to
Say this one more time.
Yeah?
chant for us.
Actu-
And for the
actually,
honor of
I
our
can-
first Aliyah, I'd like to invite forward Marilyn Mahler, Nalamod Aliyah Rishonah, who is doing an Aliyah in honor of her Bat Mitzvah Torah portion and also the Torah portion at the service of the end of her adult B'nai Mitzvah learning cohort. So I want to invite you forward, 250.
Let me show Carl, because I did find it.
Oh, good.
If I could just
Okay,
say
can I
one word. When
just-
I was just about 13, my family belonged to a conservative synagogue on Long Island, and the tradition then was that girls became bat mitzvah on Friday nights, and we read Haftorah, and we didn't read Torah. We were given a cassette. I was given a cassette, and I learned my bat mitzvah portion, and that was that. And although I went to Hebrew school for many, many years, 3 days a week, we were never taught that the Haftorah portion was connected with the Torah portion. So that, I did not learn that until my daughter was becoming a bat mitzvah, and I went to the adult, we went to the adult b'nai, not the adult b'nai mitzvah, but the parents' parents' portion of that, where we learned that, where I learned anyway, that the Haftorah was actually connected to the Torah portion. So whenever June came around, I would, and on the occasional times that I would come to synagogue, I would listen for the beginning, I would listen for my bat mitzvah portion, because although I didn't know what it was attached to, I knew it started, Roni v'simchi bat Zion. So one June, my mother had passed away, and I came to say Kaddish, and I heard Roni v'simchi. So I went to Rabbi Grushko, and I said, may I chant my bat mitzvah portion next year? And she said, yes, but I'm actually starting an adult b'nai mitzvah class, and I think that, you should join. And I said, that's not really for me. I already became a bat mitzvah. And she did some gentle arm twisting. And of course, I joined the group, and Marilyn Miller was in that class, leading to some very interesting email mix-ups with Marilyn Mahler and Marilyn Miller in the same class. But it was transformational for me. It was an extraordinary year. And in a wonderful development, the adult b'nai mitzvah portion was the same as my childhood portion. So that was just a wonderful cycle. And I just want to say it is also my mother's yahrzeit. So there are just so many layers of meaning, and it's just such a, it's a wonderful, and yes, and Paul is a member, the only male, which also was a very interesting dynamic as well. So it all knits together on so many different levels.
I love that.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai habarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamavorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el Aharon ve'amarta elav, be'alotecha el et hanerot, el mul pnei hamenorah, ya'iru shivat hanerot. Vayas ken Aharon el mul pnei hamenorah, he'elah nerotecha, kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe, v'zeh maseh hamenorah miksha zahav, ad yirecha ad pircha miksha hi kamareh, asher hera Adonai et Moshe, kenasa et hamenorah. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, kach et haleviim mitoch b'nei Yisrael, v'tiharta otam, v'chotaseh lachem l'taram hazeh lehem mehatat, v'eviru tar al kol besaram, v'chibtzu v'gdehem v'yiteharu, v'lakhu par ben bakar uminchato soled bilulav ashamen, ufar sheni ben bakar tikach lechatat, v'hikrivta et haleviim lifnei ohel moed, v'hikchalta et kol adad b'nei Yisrael, והקרבת את הלוויים לפני אדוני, ושמחו בבני ישראל את ידיהם על הלוויים, והניף אהרון את הלוויים תנופה לפני אדוני מאת בני ישראל, והיו לעבוד את עבודת ישראל והלוויים יסמכו את ידיהם על ראש הפרים, ועשה את האחד חטאת ואת האחד עולה לאדוני לכפר על הלוויים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. I should go off to you. Thank you.
Yes, I got it. Oh, yes, you have Arlene.
With Torah in our midst, we offer a prayer of healing. In just a moment, we'll recite the words of Misha Berach together as a community. Today, we're praying for Sandy Sarabin, Tracy Lustig, Cassie Lustig, Michael Umans, Paulette Cohane, Patricia Horn, Stephen Schwinder, Perry Soskin, Roy Soskin, Jean Wisen, Lori Weinberg, Richard Carver, Shira Eliza, Robert Appel, Zvi Leschetz, Mark Miller, Ellen Kirshner, Bobby Waldman, Mark Margulies, Paul Biddleman, Joseph Abada, Tom Lee, Ricky Dessen, Harriet Feldman, Eric Alper, Peter Boritz, Pauline Rothstein, Eric Ruthius, Brian Altman, Ari Guinor, Phyllis Eidelberg, Ricky Dessen, Fred Jaffe, and Arlene Jaffe. Are there additional names to add to our prayers of healing this Shabbat? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My cousin Mitch Khan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ahora Babina, Kaya Sarah, Deborah, Bakidum, Elizabeth Wright, Kaya Mocha, David Ben Baruch, Rena DeBuzia, Audrey Shankman, Rachel Sarah, Kaya Leah, Herb G. Brandon.
Thank you. David. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Maxine.
Sarah Rafa, Aviva Bat Yehuda, Miriam Bat Moshe, Moshe Shmuel, my friend Clay.
Thank you. We think of all those in need of healing as we pray the words of Misha Berach together.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mikor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mikor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
And together we say, Amen. For our second Aliyah this Shabbat morning, we'll continue with Numbers 8, verse 15 on page 953 of the Torah commentary. It's my honor to invite Arlene Rosen forward to be our Torah chanter and Susan Keeman for a birthday Aliyah.
I was joking when I said that. A
A
month early.
pre-birthday Aliyah, which anybody is welcome to have anytime because it's always before your birthday. Nalamod Aliyah Sheni. All right.
It's always before your birthday.
Just making stuff up over here.
So you start with
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Ambarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Vayed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'yacharechein yavo halvim lavod et ohel moed v'tihartam otam v'heinafta otam tinufa ki nitunim hema li mitok b'nei Yisrael tachat pitrat korehem bechor chol mi b'nei Yisrael lachakti otam li ki li chol bechor b'nei Yisrael ba'adam u'b'behema bayom hakoti chol bechor b'vnei be'eretz Mitzrayim hikashti otam li.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Mata B'tochenu Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. You chanted for a reason.
Yes, I just wanted to say that that was the portion that I chanted for my adult B'nai Mitzvah 14 years ago, and Cantor Shana was our cantor. So,
First class, I think.
yes, I think it was, with Rabbi Lisa Grushkow. And chanting Torah and Haftorah has become a tradition. It has really put me on a spiritual path. In addition to studying the weekly Torah portion, and two of my Minyanites are here, Maxine and Anna. So yeah, I'm very grateful, and I'm very happy to be a part of this community that has nourished me for the last 14 years. Thank you.
Asher Koach.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, go on.
To lift Torah this Shabbat morning, I want to invite Jacob. We are, I know, surprise. On the bottom of page 252, please rise as you are able.
He even thought to put a chair for himself. V'zot HaTorah asher sa Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai yai yai yai, yai yai lai lai yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai. You may be seated. Yasher koach.
And I'd like to invite Carl back to share Haftorah with us this morning. We are reading from Zechariah, starting with chapter 2, verse 14, and we'll jump to chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. It's on page 974 of your Torah commentary.
Do you want to say anything
What?
about this? Do you want to say anything about this? No.
Unless you want to.
No, no. $974, yes. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar benvi'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai Habocher b'Torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek rani v'simchi b'tzion ki hineni va V'shachanti betochech ne'um Adonai v'nilvu goyim rabim el Adonai b'yom hahu v'hayu li le'am v'shachanti betochech V'yadad ki Adonai tzeva'ot shilachani elayich v'nachal Adonai et Yehuda chelko al admat hakodesh uvachar od v'Yerushalayim Chas kol basar mipnei Adonai ki ne'or mim'on kodsho. And now we're going to page 976. Va'an va'omar el mal'aha dover bi lemor ma'ele Adoni vayan hamalach hadover bi vayomer elai chalo yadata ma hema Eleva omar lo Adoni vayan vayomer elai lemor zeh devar Adonai el Zerubbabel lemor lo v'chayil v'lo v'koach ki imbruchi amar Adonai tzeva'ot mi'atar hagadol lifnei Zerubbabel limshor V'chotzi et ha'even harosha tishuot chen lach baruch atah Adonai melech haolam tzur kol ha'olamim tzadik b'chol hadorot El hane'eman homer ve'oseh המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה, אדוני, מקדש השבת.
Beautiful, Carl.
Yasher Koach, thank you so much to our Torah and Haftorah chanters this Shabbat morning. I invite us all to rise as we return Torah to the Ark on page 256.
Yalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayoren keren le'amo, tehila lecho hasido, livnei Yisrael am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikima v'tomechea meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chonetivotea shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu kekedem.
We remain standing as we turn to page 282 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו כהמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn to our loved ones who are no longer with us as we prepare to say the words of Mourner's Kaddish. This Shabbat, our community is remembering those who have recently died: Sarah Delson, Candy Wasser, Rosalie Wright, Susan Baumgarten, Bert Bitterman, Roe Mandel, Harold L. Sokoloff, Eli Morrison, and Albert Sanders. Are there other names to add for those who are mourning in the period of Shiv'ah, the first 7 days? In Shloshim, the first 30 days. Or in Shana, the first year of mourning. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Today, our community also observes the yard sites of Kitty Amsterdam, Louis Amsterdam, Stella Apfelberg, Leonard Barbin, Betty Epstein-Beaton, Irving Berger, Paul Blendon, Edith Brown, Paul Carter, Sophie Diatlo, Samuel A. Epstein, Judy Finkelstein, Eleanor Fleischer, Helen Gelfand, Dorothy Gewirtz, Phyllis Glucroft, Jack Goldberg, Eli Gordon, Cyril Gottesman, Ernest Graff, Herbert Greenberg, Philip Greenberg, Benjamin Grunstein, Dr. Philip Grunfest, Alan Hellman, Kurt Hertz, Robert Hill, Jenny Jarrett, Daniel Koch, Selma Koch, Estelle Coe, Milton Colbert, Babette Lockman, Claire Lafer, Mark Levinson, Henry Lieb, Carol Lieberman, Max Lobel, Jack Lobsons, Dr. Murray Marin, Dr. Alfred Markowitz, Howard Marcus, Rosalind Mahler, Melvin Miller, John R. Murray, Gisela F. Reeson, Lillian B. Robinson, Alfred C. Rosenhirsch, Ethel Rudd, Amalia Schnurmacher, Rosalind Blum Schulman, Lillian Schwager, J. Edward Schwartz, Esperine Schuster, Gilbert Siegel, Esther Rothman Silberman, Jerome W. Sinsheimer, Elliot Isaac Sobel, Barbara Spear, Harry Stein, Andrew Stiglitz, Helen Stiglitz, Gerald Stoner, Arthur Thal, Edith Eisenberg Warner, Golda Wisniewski, and Janet Zorn. Are there additional names to add to our Kaddish prayers this Shabbat? My father, Alan Singer. Thank you. Tom. My mother, thank you. I invite us to rise as one community as we recite the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yit kadal v'yit kadash shemei rabba, Be'alma divrach cherute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye tzachol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'olam olamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudusha brechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'miran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. Just a couple of quick announcements. We will gather outside in just a moment to do Kiddush and Motzi. We'll come back in here for a little bit of Torah study this morning. We'll gather back in here at like 11:40. On Tuesday at 6 p.m., we are exploring the Song of Songs with our summer rabbinic resident, Ariel Stein. If you're looking for a little bit of summer learning, don't miss it. She's awesome, and we're lucky to have her for just a couple weeks this summer. And next Shabbat, we're honored to have a guest speaker, Professor Charlotte Vogt. She's on the chemistry faculty of Technion Institute in Israel. And there'll be a festive oneg after Friday night services, so plan to join us for Shabbat evening. And on Tuesday, June 20th, you are invited to one of our member appreciation events this summer, coffee with the clergy and CRS staff on Tuesday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. right outside on 83rd Street. Come join us to say good morning, schmooze, have coffee, no RSVP necessary. Come as you are and start your day with us. So I invite us to join outside for Kiddush and Motzi, and we will come back in here for those who would like to continue with a little bit of Shabbat study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Excuse me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
was late. I was on a
apologize.
crosstown bus.
Oh my gosh, no
And
worries. Are you
I
okay?
didn't, yes, but I didn't know that there was a half marathon today, and the 86th Street crosstown went to 96th Street and then let me off at Columbus.
10 minutes later, I would have gotten worried about you. But I figured,
I'm up, like someone said, I'm always early. I was so.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Seth is graciously handing out handouts for us. We're going to do something a little bit different from what I normally bring to us in this space, and I'm going to tell you why. This is from an amazing collection of Torah commentary called Torah Queries, Queeries. And sort of in the same vein and ideology of the Women's Torah Commentary or the Musar Torah Commentary, Torah Queries is an amazing collection of queer scholars and queer Jewish professionals who are writing on the Torah portion of the week. And so in honor of Pride Month, and to bring us a little bit of a different perspective on the book of Numbers, I have brought us from chapter 36, the 36th Parsha of the Torah, Setting the Stage for Pluralistic Judaism, Parsha B'Chalotcha by Steve Gutow. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read a little bit, and then we're going to pause and study a little bit, and we're going to sort of bring in this new voice and perspective on our Torah portion. So the idea of Torah Queries is that we can and should bring a queer LGBTQ lens to our Torah study because it will enhance our understanding of text, the same way that we would bring a feminist perspective to Torah study. So we're gonna try it. If this is new for you, it's okay to lean into the discomfort a little bit. If this is interesting to you, great. And if not, give it a chance and see what comes up from this study and from this person's perspective, a fairly succinct commentary on B'Chalotcha. The Torah is not a text that generally extols and promotes the power of the people over the established hierarchy. God usually wins arguments. When God is not involved, Moses and his chosen few are generally the ones whose power rules over the Israelites. However, this is not always the case. The religious and political control of the Torah establishment and its hierarchy of God, Moses, Aaron, Miriam, and the priests is not static. Sometimes those in power create a more populist power arrangement. As rare as that occurs, when the hierarchy actually desires populist change, it tends to be successful. There is no clearer example of that than in this parsha. In B'Chalotcha, Moses himself insists that everyone should have the opportunity to speak for God. If everyone has the chance to prophesy, then certainly, at least in B'Chalotcha, everyone in the community can lead. There is remarkable reach in such an idea. If the reader carries the concept to its fullest extent, then certainly the text supports a call to permit LGBT and women the rights of communal integration and leadership. A more detailed look at the text shows how inclusive and populist the portion is. In chapter 11, Moses, weary of the constant complaining of the Israelites, asks God why he has this burden of leadership. He says that the burden is too great, and in particularly dramatic and idiosyncratic Jewish guilt-invoking parlance, asks God to take his life rather than force him to continue as a leader. God is usually sympathetic to this guilt-laden appeal and asks Moses to gather 70 elders to whom God grants the spirit of prophecy. Prophecy is the most intimate relationship between God and humanity because God and the prophet become so close that they actually become, for a time, a single voice in spirit. In this relationship, God's spirit and will actually can be imbued in the words of the prophet. Two men, Eldad and Medad, who had been designated to be with the 70 but did not choose to join the gathering of elders, begin prophesying in the camp. Joshua, Moses' lieutenant, and in this portion the voice of the established order, asks Moses to restrain them. In one of the most democratic verses anywhere in the Torah, Moses responds to Joshua, "Are you wrought up on my account? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord put the Lord's spirit upon them." This idea goes beyond inclusion of Eldad and Medad, who had the right to be among the elders. Moses' revolutionary words include everyone. Okay, so pause for a second. Responses, reactions to this reading so far of this Torah portion.
The one line that really stood out for me was all that the Lord's people were prophets.
Why that line?
because one never knows where the next great idea will come from. And the next great idea, or an idea that it can inspire someone else to come up with a great idea, we never know where that can come from. And I learned as a teacher that a lot of wonderful things came from my students that inspired me to think even more deeply and more creatively and come up with stuff that blew their minds. But that was inspired by what they said or what they asked me.
Great. Okay.
So one never knows.
You never know where the next great idea might come from. Great. Naomi and then David.
So first you have a small in-group, then you have a bigger in-group, but they choose not to be in the in-group at all, and you don't know what they're going to say, and I think that's the point. Well, we'll find that out. They don't want to be part of the establishment. They want to be themselves. But he does have one error, which is when he says populist, he should be saying democratic. Populist is not the correct word, which is a specific word in political science, so it's sad that no one caught that error.
Okay, so we're talking,
wrong.
Moses, Eldad and Medad have the opportunity to be in the in-group and they choose not to. So what do we make of that? Great. David, you want to? Okay. Okay, great.
Despite what's in this commentary and perhaps what's in the Torah, I mean, Judaism is a very egalitarian religion. We all start in dust, we end at dust, we all get buried in a plain pine coffin. You're not supposed to have a fancy coffin. We all gather. The Torah talks about gathering together, men, women, I think children, even mentioned in Nitzavim.
Yeah.
And so, that's part of the egalitarian streak. And everybody has the right to be respected, and everybody is supposed to have teshuvah on the high holidays. I mean, everything applies to everyone. Yes, there's some hierarchy to tell the story of the Torah, but I think overall it's very much.
Okay, so there's a tension here, right, that we are lifting up here in this Torah portion, but throughout the Torah and throughout rabbinic and Jewish tradition. That tension is between egalitarianism and hierarchy. So there are times that we are very egalitarian. Everybody is dust to dust, ashes to ashes, right? We were all created from one person, so that no one can say my ancestors are greater than your ancestors. There's some egalitarianism and some equality throughout our text, certainly. And we have in the Torah a very clear system of hierarchy in Leviticus and Numbers, and then a little bit in Deuteronomy of the priests. There it's very clear that some people have different roles than other people, and the priests have a higher role in the Israelite camp. Everybody has a role. It's not a bad system. It's just we can be honest that there is a hierarchy here. In later rabbinic tradition, we also have a sense of egalitarianism, right? Everybody has the same funeral. Everybody's buried in a pine box. Everybody gets Kaddish said for them. And we also know that there is hierarchy, that in traditional interpretation, only men count in a minyan, women don't count in a minyan. We can go through and name this tension in lots of different places, and I think what he's doing here for us is lifting up one way in which we might be inclined to see the hierarchy piece taking precedence here, but he's shifting us to think a little bit more about how we might see within Numbers a little bit of egalitarianism. So I want to jump to Arlene and then Robin.
Well, in terms of the hierarchy piece, the line, ask Moses to gather 70 elders, just as more of a contemporary spin on this, how Marilyn Muller said for her bat mitzvah, when she turned 13, she could only read Haftorah. When I turned 13, it wasn't even an option. So that's why the two of us, plus plenty of other people, went through adult B'nai Mitzvah programs because it wasn't even offered to us.
Right, and he tells it to us at the very beginning here. The religious and political control of the Torah establishment and its hierarchy of God, Moses, Aaron, Miriam, and the priests is not static. We can add to that sentence, and neither is the rest of Jewish tradition as much as we may want to believe it is. Okay, Robin. But thanks to Jacob for being our microphone runner, as always.
Anything needs to be picked up and put down, other guy.
So at the beginning of the second paragraph, Moses is insisting that everyone should have the opportunity to speak. So this is, of course, the English translation. I was wondering exactly what it said in the Hebrew, because it seems to me that's always been interpreted as the men rather than. I mean, what word is it in the Torah that allows us to say everyone, including the women and other people who had otherwise been excluded?
Let me look while we jump to Eva to share.
Thank you. So this just brought to my mind the Korach rebellion, where they say, well, who are you to be the one? Aren't we all holy? Aren't we all, worthy of speaking to God or connecting to God? I don't know what the exact words are. So obviously, the rebellion was put down, and Moses, who was actually very humble, put his head on the ground. He lay down. So that's challenging. That there is a hierarchy, but it's also challenging the so-called equality, if you will. But at the same time, we have the women who challenge the inheritance. The daughters of
Zelophehad. We'll get there
right.
in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Right. So they have a right to speak in the Torah. So I think the Torah gives us numerous examples of both. Like, there's a lot of tension. You have both ideas that, only certain people can be prophets, and yet we can all speak.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Okay. So I want to keep going. Here's what he continues with. Moses' revolutionary words include everyone. He goes beyond the idea of any limitation in number or qualification. He simply says that all of God's people should be granted the most exalted status in Judaism, the status of prophets. Similar sentiments are expressed by the prophet Joel when he says, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy." You know this line from Debbie Friedman. "Your elders shall dream dreams, and your young shall see visions." Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, the great Torah scholar, commenting on the B'chalotcha verse, wrote, "We are shown that there is no monopoly on spiritual leadership. The spiritual powers granted by God are not the privilege of any particular office or status. The lowliest of the nation shares with the highest the opportunity of being granted divine inspiration. Contrary to the normative voice of the tradition, which extols and protects the power of the hierarchy, here Moses reaches out and includes everyone. If Moses wished that all of the Jewish people were prophets, certainly women and LGBTQ people are included." What's fascinating about this is that Shimshon Raphael Hirsch is one of the great-grandfathers of the modern Orthodoxy. That he is claimed by the modern Orthodox movement as one of their great Torah scholars, and he is. He's an amazing Torah scholar. He lived in 19th century Germany, was a very prolific writer, Torah interpreter, and it's a fascinating piece for somebody to bring in a queer commentary, and using his words, we are shown that there is no monopoly on spiritual leadership. Okay, I'm gonna skip a little bit. You can take it with you if you want. I won't be offended if you don't. Towards the end. In this portion, Moses' message is that everyone has the right to equality and leadership in God's world. If great prophet leaders attest that all of God's people could be prophets, if he is given God's affirmation when he marries outside the tribe, we missed that part because I'm pushing us forward a little bit here. There's a fascinating piece in here about Moses marrying Zipporah, a Cushite who is a non-Israelite. Then surely the field is open to everyone to be a part of the Israelite nation, regardless of his or her sex or sexual inclinations. Homosexuality is not a reason to limit access to religious leadership or to sexual intimacy, even in the time of the Torah. In this portion, Moses' statements and victories are messages of acceptance and inclusion. And God's rebuke to Aaron and Miriam suggests that God, too, envisions a pluralistic world. Responses and reactions to how he understands the meaning of this Torah portion. Naomi. Say, well, I don't know what that means.
From the Supreme Court, when the way they look at.
I understand what it means, but I'm not
Well,
sure what you're saying.
What it is he's saying something very generic is being used by him to put himself for inclusion. In other words, some other people, not me, would argue that it's an overreach, that he's using this interpretation for good ends.
Okay.
But that it's not. But another person could argue it's insufficiently explicit, given the other exclusions and the other sexisms and the other negative things that are in other parshas, that he's lifting this, and that's nice, but you can refute it.
Okay, Susan.
So what's interesting to me is when we talk about the hierarchy and we talk about the egalitarian part, a lot of the hierarchy seems like it could be perceived as a man-made construct, and there is a God-made construct as well. You know, if it is very easy to just say, hey, if you are a Kohen, you're a priest. You know, that's really easy for people if you're trying to create a leadership and decide who's going to be a leader and who's not. But is that really what God wants here? Because God created us all, and we are all different. So yes, there's a hierarchy and everyone has their role, but not everyone has the same role. But who are we to say who is called to which?
I love that, and I love that there's this question that probably would take more time for us to pull apart these strands of what are the God-given instructions and the God-given rights, and then how do we understand the Torah as having them be filtered through human hands and human experiences, right? So can we hold, I think I'll give you my bias and my conceit. I think the answer is yes. Can we hold both that the Torah is sacred and divine and that it has been touched and shaped by human hands, and so therefore may require interpretation, reinterpretation, and exploration for what it is that's at the heart of this human document? So I love that is what you're bringing up. Jacob, you want to add?
I find it fascinating that the more we see Moses fail as a leader, the more we see the essence of his Judaism come about. Because you find a leader, you think they're addressed with the same problem repeatedly. Over time, you'd expect them to be solidified in how they react to their constituents in a very similar situation. But instead, he turns it down and detests his leadership, asks God for an ending not only of his leadership, but of his life. And I think it's so interesting that in the turnaround, his response is that what this is not this hierarchical thing, it's this collective thing we're a part of. It's not, he doesn't know he's Moshe Rabbeinu yet, you know?
Right, he's just some guy named Moses.
Right, and I think it's such a natural, which is so fascinating that his goal is to try to separate this divorce between leadership and Judaism, and he's drawn more towards the Jewishness, the inherent quality of what Judaism has to offer, as opposed to a position of power, which I think is so rare and so beautiful.
And it's a good question for this Jewish community, for our Jewish community, and for all communities about what happens when you exalt a leader and don't have any kind of communal support or communal leadership of your own community. And we'll pause our study here on this with two final thoughts, which is one, that this is it often happens that this Torah portion happens in June. It's a great Torah portion for soon-to-be camp counselors around the summer, because the first time your campers ask you what time is lunch, what time is rest hour, it doesn't bother you so much. The second time you can maybe deal with it. And by the 17th time that they've asked you in the first week of camp, what time is lunch, what time is the mail coming, you want to strangle them. And their complaints don't seem, it's the same complaint, but it's hard to be in charge of people, especially when they are repeating themselves. So anybody who's worked with kids knows that they need a little bit of love and patience, and Moses too gets to be leader partly because of his patience. And second, by way of conclusion, what I'll say is we have been celebrating Pride Month here. We got to, many of you were at Cantor Yakonov's fabulous concert. We'll release some of the video from that after it's been cleaned up and put together a little bit, so watch it or watch it again. We celebrated Pride Shabbat last night, and Pride Month is really important to us, but the ideas of pride are something that we take with us through all of our time here in the synagogue, in the Reform movement, and I think hopefully in the Jewish world. And so I wanted to bring us something from Torah Queries, which is maybe not a text that has had as much prominence in Jewish spaces. And so if it's interesting, I hope you'll check it out. If it challenged you, I hope you'll check it out. I think it's really important for us to lift up these voices and to look at things that we haven't looked at before. And whether or not we agree with them, it's the act of study that's really important, and these voices deserve to be in this space. So that's my prayer for all of us on this Shabbat. I'm wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom, a beautiful afternoon, and don't forget to come hang out with us in June and all the things that we mentioned.
Yasher Koach, Rabbi, thank you.